I am always really encouraged and fascinated and intrigued and delighted about the quality of the guests that I get to interview on this podcast. I'm consistently humbled and grateful that I get to hang out with the men and women that I interview, because they're really brilliant people. By the way, I'm not the one who's usually able to get these people on the podcast. It is, and I've got to give credit here, Mike Moreau, who is the owner of Concord Consulting, as well as Dwayne Fliss. At times, he's given some help. Though those two gentlemen have helped a ton in getting really great quality guests. So thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Mike. I know that you've given a ton of time and energy to this, so I appreciate that. I'm going to introduce Jeff here in a minute, and I'll let kind of the interview take care of itself, because this entire interview is kind of an introduction to who he is, what he's done. Just as an aside, off camera, after our interview, I just peppered him with a few questions, because he's again a fascinating guy, and I was selfishly taking a little bit more of his time, but helped so much. And again, you're going to get to know this very quickly. But when I asked for a little bit of advice, he didn't give me advice. What he did was he asked more questions, and as he asked more questions, as every good salesperson does, he was able to understand a little bit more of my situation to give me better advice. And to me, just a quick rant on sales. So many people see sales as this negative thing, and it's not. Sales is a beautiful process of partnering people with things that meet their needs. And the people consistently that I have on this podcast, and Jeff is a great example of this, are so good at asking questions to determine what somebody's needs are. And you're going to hear why I'm going into this a little bit right now. Enjoy this episode. Enjoy getting to know Jeff a little bit more. We'll have another podcast in a little bit here as well. Good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm not sure when people are watching or listening to us here. I'm with Jeff Calibaba, and we're connecting in a unique way. We've had some different conversations in the past. And I was just telling Jeff just before this interview, we're going to do something different in this first interview. We're doing 2 interviews with Jeff. The second one is going to be focused on HR and what some really unique things you're doing there, Jeff. But I want the audience to get a really good handle on who you are in this first interview. Again, go into any story you want. There's nothing, from my perspective, off limits. Just make sure that you're comfortable with it, and then we'll get into this. But welcome to this interview here.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me. I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, well, what I want to do, and I'm going to preface this. This is what I heard about Jeff. This is how I was kind of my first introduction to who you were. I had a conversation with Mike, and he said, "You've got to interview Jeff. He's just this really interesting guy. He's got this really interesting story. He's done a whole bunch of crazy things." He said, and this is kind of my take on what he said. But he said, Jeff got into AEDs and selling these AEDs, and instead of selling kind of 1 and 2 here and there, he convinced a massive group, just really by putting together value, by creating a ton of value, he put together this enormous sale with AEDs. And then he took that same kind of idea and the thinking to signs, and then he's been doing this in HR. And so he gave me a few numbers and other things, which I'm not sharing here, right? Because I want the story right from you. But maybe share where you start. You don't even have to start with any of the stuff I just mentioned. But where did you start in business? What's a bit of your background in your story?
Well, I'm originally from Saskatchewan, like a small town about 80 miles south of Regina. A small town called Radville. When I grew up there's about 1,000 people. And my dad was kind of, I'm going to say, the town entrepreneur. Like he ran the registry, he ran the ambulance service there, the funeral home agent, sold all kinds of investments, crop insurance, and so on and so forth. So he was definitely known by everybody. And I think that's where I kind of got my entrepreneurial spirit from, was being around my dad all my life there until I was about 18, and then I moved to the States. So.
Okay, so when you were growing up, were you involved? Were you one of the slaves that he had running things around town?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
okay.
I remember, being 12 years old, having to walk through the funeral home to go shovel the snow or cut the grass, and there's bodies in the funeral home, which like at 12 years old freaked you out quite a bit. So doing all that, and But yeah, I was at 15 years old when I had my learner's license. I was actually driving ambulance with my father at that age. So
my son would feel your pain right now. He's this weekend we're washing out, the two of us. We're washing out about 40,000 square feet of underground parkade space on our own. I'm like, hey, I'm hiring you for the weekend. You're not doing anything else for 14 hours a day. So he knows that well. Okay, so then you took off to the States, and what did you do there?
I became a paramedic. So I went down to the University of North Dakota and Health Sciences Division and took my paramedic training because we didn't have paramedics in Saskatchewan yet. So there was no educational programs. And I remember the day I was 15 and my dad came and grabbed me just before school and said, hey, I need you to come on this ambulance call with me. And there was a 16-year-old kid that was in a gravel crusher. It's like a big auger kind of thing. And he was in there changing some of the blades and fins out of the auger. And an older gentleman came to work that day, turned the thing on, and this kid was in there. And basically, we finally got him out, an hour later kind of thing. But he eventually died. And that was kind of a career decision for me because I felt so helpless, like, listening to this kid, cry for, needed water. And then we finally got him out, but he had a lacerated femoral artery. And so I wanted, once I saw that happen in front of me, it's like, I felt so helpless and I wanted to become a paramedic and be able to help people. So I went down to Grand Forks, North Dakota, did all the training down there, came back, and I ended up being the first licensed practicing full-time paramedic in the province of Saskatchewan. So,
and what did that look like at the time? I mean, if you're the only one practicing, what was the setup for you?
Well, it took, I'm going to say 6 months, 12 months for me to get sort of the license. They were just in the process of trying to get the training program set up, but I had to do a bunch of additional OR time, doing intubations and time in the ER and so on. And then once we got the requirements from the government to go ahead, then there was about 3 of us in it started to practice and stuff in the province. So, and then from there, it's taken off ever since. So.
Yeah, I'm in Regina right now as we're talking.
Oh, you're kidding? Okay.
I know I know exactly where the town is. My dad actually grew up a little bit west of you, south of Moose Jaw in Ormiston. I don't know if you remember where Ormiston is. It's way smaller than 1,000 people. I think it had like 15 the last time I stopped. So really, really tiny.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Okay, so you get back. How did you then transition from kind of almost a government job in a lot of ways? And what was that like for you? And then when did you get into sales?
Well, when I was in the US going through paramedic school, one of the things I started to do is, like, you go on an ambulance call and let's say somebody's unconscious and you're looking at their home medications that they've got. And you'd say, okay, this is for diabetes or epilepsy or whatever. And so what I started to do is to capture the medications that people had, and then I would look it up when I'd get home, and then I would say, okay, this is what this medication's for, heart failure, whatever. And so I started to build that out. And then as I went through school, there's all kinds of different charts and scores and stuff that you would need. Like an example would be, let's say if you had a 4-year-old child having a epileptic seizure. Well, how much does a 4-year-old child weigh? So it'd have all these weight conversions based on their age. So I started to develop this book, and I call it the EMS Pocket Reference Guide. So once I finished up school, came back, I just kind of continued to, add to this thing and make changes and update all the drug doses, stuff like that. So I ended up doing 14 editions to this book. And I ended up selling 250,000 copies of it worldwide. And from there, after I started the book and those sales and shipping them all over the place and advertising all throughout the US and worldwide, then I started to sell other products, like medical kind of holsters and stethoscopes, to the point it became ended up selling ambulances at the end of the day and everything that kind of went into an ambulance. So,
and who, like, I'm trying to think about how you're building this out, because you weren't a salesperson. You built your own business. You were somebody. I mean, you've got to have suppliers. You've got to have all this put together. How did you build that up, just on your own as a paramedic?
Networking a lot. I'm going to say going to different conventions and meeting with some of the major manufacturers and some of the big guys. You know, it took years to get the relationships in place and stuff to be able for them to kind of believe in you, believe in the company, for you to represent their product line. So it's it was, you know, years and years of kind of building it up. And back in the old days, you know, we had catalogs that we'd send out, and then eventually went on to like an e-commerce system and that kind of thing. But it's we were trying to be, you know, ahead of the curve all the time.
All right. So again, you're building this other business. AEDs are related. How did you get into AEDs? And tell me the story, because it's a really cool story about how many units you sold and how you thought through the process.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but yeah. So AEDs, automated external defibrillators, kind of became the thing. Like, so when you're a paramedic, you're using kind of the manual defibrillators for cardiac arrest to shock people. And then as the technology advanced, they automated the process where kind of, you know, Joe first responder could basically utilize them with some training. But it's pretty simple to, you know, you got to turn the machine on, put on 2 pads, push the button, and then the technology determines if they're in ventricular fibrillation or not. So I saw this happening where it was going to basically someday be these AEDs are going to be in every public building. They're going to be in some personal residence and so on. So we started with, you know, going down this path of, okay, let's get out there and let's hit up the golf courses and the swimming pools and public buildings and so on. And we ended up, I'm going to say, discovering who our number one customer type was the municipalities. And it was like the EMS departments, the fire departments that were the ones that were really kind of embracing, pushing AEDs in the community. And we partnered up with a large company, $17 billion company at the time, called Medtronic out of Redmond, Washington, right next to Microsoft. And we ended up getting the distribution rights with them for the defibrillators. And as things advanced, we started to discover, okay, what are the challenges that these municipalities are faced with? Well, one is, you know, how do we get the money, the funding to buy all these defibrillators? That was number one. Number two, there was a liability issue. Like, what if somebody uses the defibrillator incorrectly, or what if we don't have a defibrillator on site and we get sued for not having a defibrillator? And the third thing was there was a huge gap with the public awareness of what was going on with, you know, why is this important? Why do we need AEDs in all these public buildings? So that was a trend that we started to see when we started talking with the municipalities. So what we ended up doing is we created a program called the HeartSave Awareness Program. And I've been involved with a program now out of Toronto called the Strategic Coach Program for Entrepreneurs. And one of the things they teach us there is how to package up your business differently to get out of what they call the commoditization trap, you know, where it's all about price or features and benefits. So, and then they say, you know, you need to name your process. So we created what's called the HeartSave Awareness Program. So we would go into the municipalities and say, okay, yeah, we can sell you a defibrillator, and you want to know our price or the features and benefits of our product over the other one. But we also have this program called the HeartSave Awareness Program. And what we ended up doing is, okay, well, you've got funding issues. Okay, well, so we hired on a fundraising coach that researched all the grants that were available out there. And then, so when they came on as a customer of ours, we assigned X number of hours for a fundraising coach to fill out all the grant applications and find them the money. On the liability side, we hired Dr. Fedorik out of Windsor, Ontario, who is a doctor and a lawyer, So we had all of these first responders functioning under his medical license to cover them off from a liability point of view. He wrote all the legal letters to the municipalities to make sure that they were comfortable with making sure there was no liability for them. And then the other thing we discovered through the CRCT, which licenses TV, radio, billboard campaigns, 15% of the airtime or exposure that they get out there with billboards and bus shelter posters, all that kind of stuff, has to be 15% public service announcements. So what we ended up doing is we developed TV commercials, radio ads, all kinds of ads for the buses and bus shelters and so on. And all we had to do is go in and basically change the logos out. So we'd go into these communities and say, City of Toronto, give us your logo. We've got all the content. They would go to the media, and the media would say, thank you so much, because 15% of our airtime has to be public service announcements, and they end up having to create it all. So they totally embraced it and said, yeah, give it to us and we'll publish it. So that's how we solved kind of the three biggest issues that the municipalities had. And the other thing, our competitors, what they were doing was focusing on price, dropping their price as low as they could on the defibrillators, trying to sell their product on the features and benefits. And we ended up just kind of blowing the competition away. And then Medtronic down in the States are saying, like, how is Canada being so successful over other parts of the world? And then from there, we ended up going to other parts of the world to represent them. And then they licensed our HeartSave Awareness Program that we educate people in New Zealand and Australia and all throughout the US and around the world kind of thing. So
I kind of go, we could take this in a few different ways. Maybe talk a little bit, because this is the quick summary for me. The quick summary is that you've got good supply, you've got good demand, but you've got these hurdles that my guess is from a city's perspective is kind of insurmountable. Like, how do we get all this done? Do we want to put the time? Do we want to invest the time and energy and fix all these problems? And you went, hey, I'll solve all of them and just hand you everything on a platter. I'll do everything for you on my own dime, own time, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we developed all kinds of different tools and so on, and then we ended up creating our own standard where they would, the city would be sort of do a what's it called, a proclamation kind of thing, where the city's a HeartSave Awareness community, and that was kind of a cool thing. So it's like, hey, if you get this, and this in place, we're going to come in and we're going to proclaim you as a HeartSave Awareness community and stuff. So we created our own standard. And we had signage all over the public buildings and that kind of thing. So Saskatchewan was our first city that we proclaimed a HeartSave Awareness community.
So from that perspective, the city gets to market itself by doing all of this, right? They're seen as doing a better job of taking care of people.
Absolutely, yep, for sure.
Which is news. It's everything that the politicians want in the city as well, which is excellent. So solving, again, the theme here is solving problems in unique ways, solving problems that are bigger than most people are willing to tackle, maybe, and through that process, creating an entirely new product. The product wasn't your AEDs. The product was really, in many ways, it was marketing for the city. It was creating health for the city and awareness in the city and connecting different people in different ways. It was a full package that you brought to the city, which is why, again, you said you wiped your competition clean. So that's cool. Go to signs now. Tell me about the signs. I want to come back. There are a few questions I've got outstanding right now, but go to signs, talk about signs, and then we'll go back and talk about Strategic Coach a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So I was a CEO of a large traffic supply company. We had probably 350 staff and 5 locations kind of in Western Canada. And we were in, again, a commoditized environment where we're manufacturing traffic signs. We had 15,000 traffic products. We had another division that's out there doing road closures and so on. So we kind of had those 3 divisions, but it's like, how do we, compete with traffic safety? lots of competition in that market. So we ended up jumping on the bandwagon with what they call this Vision Zero initiative. How do we get to zero fatalities, from traffic safety in the community with technology and so on? So we created what's called the Vision Zero Advocate Institute. And then what we would do is you'd go into municipalities and we'd work with them again to find, funding, identify different technologies that we could implement into their community to improve traffic safety, with reducing speeds and, school zones. And, we have a lot of technology coming down the pipe that, the flashing signs that say you're speeding too much and different things like that we implemented. But again, we took that program, I wrote books for the HeartSave Awareness community, and we wrote a book for the Vision Zero Advocate Institute as well. And I spoke over in Saudi Arabia to like 900 people in Saudi Arabia. It was right when women were just allowed to start driving, as an example. And they brought me in there to do a presentation to 900 people. And, we've been to New York City, and we did some work in New York City there with their program and met their mayor. And he totally endorsed the whole Vision Zero concept and so on. And so it was, two processes that I learned, through the strategic coach program, how to package your business up differently and get out of that commoditization trap. And we took both of them globally, which was pretty cool process.
How did you become the CEO of a signage company? I feel like we just missed a big gap there.
Yeah, well, I ended up doing some strategic planning work with organizations. So I was living in Calgary for about 12 years. And then for about a year and a half, I was commuting up to Edmonton. I was working for a company that did strategic planning. So I worked with about 50 organizations in Edmonton, doing their quarterly planning and annual planning. And then one of my clients was the traffic company. And then they ended up hiring me to come on board with them. So I spent about 4 years there. And then now I'm involved with, kind of at end stage of my career, but I'm, I'm running an HR company. And then I coach about 40 CEOs of organizations today. So
I'm trying to think of your timeline. Other entrepreneurs understand this, but kind of going like, how is Jeff? Are you 160 years old now? Is that about? I'm trying to think about the time needed. I'm trying to think about the time needed just to get all this done. Because you've done a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, go back to strategic coach for a second. Strategic coach, you've mentioned a couple of times. Maybe share what influence strategic coaches had. It sounds like you're still in some ways.
Yeah, Dan Sullivan, I'd say, is one of my key mentors in my life. And, Dan's probably about 82 years old today, and he's got a whole infrastructure underneath him, but still involved. And he always used to say, you're not allowed to say the R word, the retirement word, right? So, that's really sunk into me that I have no desire to kind of retire. I have a desire to slow down a little bit, but my goal is to continue, providing value and helping people and so on. But my brothers, one's 5 years older, 10 years older than me. And they were in the program and they told me about it and stuff. And I joined it back in probably 1994, somewhere in that range, I'd say, that I joined the program. And it's been, life-changing for me. It's it's a program for entrepreneurs. You have 30 to 40 people in the room. And they just teach you, a lot about business, and a lot of it's about personal stuff on your personal goals and where you want to be in life. And they've got all kinds of different tools that we utilize and stuff and the key thing that I really took away from that program is, how do you package your business up differently so you're out of that commoditization trap, and it's not all about price and features and benefits. So it's been a phenomenal program.
As a little bit of background, so we had our initial conversation. I might not have even talked with you yet, Jeff. I had conversed with Mike a little bit, and he mentioned strategic coach. So I went, you know what? I'm just going to do a little bit of background on this. I don't know much about it. Bought a couple of books or read a little bit online, went through those books. And as a curious person, I went, okay, like let's apply this to my own life and see how it plays out. Was really excited. I think the first book was 10x is easier than 2x, but
Yeah.
went through the book and immediately changed a whole bunch of things about my business. Like
Yeah.
in the last, I would say in the last 3 to 4 weeks, Jeff, I've completely revamped 2 complete areas of my business where instead of begging and doing whatever I need to get a few butts in seats or people through doors, instead people are coming to me,
Yeah.
paying 3 to 4 times the amount because I'm offering so much more value. I'm just taking care of so many more problems for people. And I just went, what a gift. If I can get that from a book, reading through it once, it sounds like Strategic Coach is phenomenal in a lot of different ways. What are other tools, other mentors, other people or systems in your life that have been really helpful in your own growth?
The EOS system, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Have you heard of that before, Mark? Or?
Yeah. I'm actually going through Traction again right now, reading it through.
Yeah.
Again.
So Traction's a very good example of where Strategic Coach comes into play. So Gino Wickman, who created that whole system, him and I were in Strategic Coach program together. So here's a guy that, there's so many, strategic planners that are out there, but he totally revamped strategic planning for, medium to, smaller businesses and stuff where, he's got a system with all these tools. He named it, EOS and Gino has had a very, very successful, career by following the strategies of Strategic Coach.
Now, you just mentioned it. You said he named it, and you put emphasis on name. I was just reading that. Name it, specific your product or your business. And you mentioned that with both signage, as well as with the EADs. The name. How important is a name to this entire process?
I think it's very important. Like, I mean, if I'm going in to sell a defibrillator, and I'm saying, okay, I'm with Medtronic Physio Control, and there's Philips Medical and Zoll Medical. I mean, the name there is about the product, the manufacturer. But it's like you go into a client and say, well, we sell defibrillators. This is the product we represent. But hey, we also have this other program, called the HeartSave Awareness Program, and then people just kind of pipe up, and you tell them, well, it's not for everybody. It's like, what do you mean it's not for everybody? Like, I want to be part of the club kind of thing, right? To get in on this. So it totally differentiates you from your competitors by saying, hey, I've got this program. Well, it's going to start off with then a couple words in program or blueprint or system or solution kind of thing, right? Is kind of the words at the end that we use. And, when you have the HeartSave Awareness Program, it's like, well, tell me more, and then that creates the opportunity to share a lot more about how you're different. And one of the tools that Strategic Coach teaches us, it's called the DOS worksheet. So it stands for dangers, opportunities, and strengths. So you go in and you talk to the, your number one customer type. So in my case, it was the municipalities. And it's like, okay, what are the dangers, challenges, issues that you face? And we just kept asking that question, putting them through the DOS worksheet. And it came up with, funding, liability, public awareness, and we just kept hearing that. And then it's like what we do then is based on as we're hearing these challenges and issues that a client has, and we just build tools or bring in experts and stuff that can help solve those problems for them. And then, once you go through the dangers, opportunities, and what the strengths are of the organization, like, hey, you're a leader in your industry, you care about your community, you want to save lives, you're won all these industry awards, and you look at all the positive things about them. And then we get into, okay, if you and I were to meet, let's say 3 years from today, what do you want to see happen in your company or your municipality for you to feel happy or satisfied with your progress and stuff? And then we get them to kind of list all that down, get them kind of pumped up. Hey, this is where we want to be. And then we finish off with, okay, so if this is where you want to be in 3 years, what are your obstacles? What's stopping you from getting there? And then they list all that off, and we already know what those obstacles are going to be. And then we already have built out the solution or have the experts that can solve that for them. And then we'll kind of pitch them and say, okay, well, if this is where you want to be in the next 3 years, and here's your challenges, well, here's our program, and this is how we can help you get there. And when we get to the point of kind of going through what we call a vision session with a client, I'd say we've got at least a 75% close rate. Based on that, it's really hard for them to say no.
Again, when you're solving every problem that somebody has and you know what those problems are going to be beforehand, you've got the professionals in place to solve those problems. Yeah, it becomes no brainer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump forward a little bit. And I'm going to tease out a little bit about what our next interview is going to be about. But you've created another business here that is again solving problems in really unique ways. Maybe I don't want to give everything away right now, because the next interview is going to be really important in this, but maybe share a little bit about where your mind has shifted into different business ideas, or maybe some of the businesses that you said no to, that you saw had a ton of runway and you just went, you know what, I'm going to focus on other things right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got into being a Tech Canada chair, which is called the Executive Committee, and they're rebranding that now because they partnered with a worldwide organization called Vistage out of San Diego. So in that organization, what we do is it's a peer group with about 15 CEOs or executives. So they've got the CEO groups, and they have what they call key executive groups. So right now I'm running 2 CEO groups with about 14, 15 CEOs from non-competing industries in that. And then I run 1 key executive group with about 14 people in that. So that gets around 43 members. So in that organization, what we do is we meet once a month, and we bring in speakers from across Canada, across the US and stuff on key topics and so on. And in the afternoon, we process different business issues. We have one of the members kind of do a host presentation, we call it. So we'll usually have the meeting at their location in their boardroom and do a tour of the facility. And we talk about macroeconomics, what's going on in the world today with the wars and tariffs and stuff like that. And so it's lonely at the top for these, CEOs and executives. So it's a great way for them to, find out what's going on in other industries. And, potentially one industry might be getting affected that's going to affect the other, CEO like 6 months down the road kind of thing. So we share a lot. It becomes a very tight group. And so I'm doing a lot of work right now with, these 43 different CEOs and executives. And then I meet each of them for 90 minutes every month. So it takes up a lot of my time, doing that. So right now, I'm running that division, or whatever I'm going to call it. I call it Line Strategic Consulting. So that's my consulting business that I run. And then I also oversee as the CEO of the Game Plan HR. And that's what we're going to get into probably next session here, to explain to you how that whole system works. So.
Came about, works, value, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'd like to spend a bit of time there. Maybe before we finish off today, Jeff, you've talked about your consulting company. Maybe share a few details. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, if somebody wants to get to know more, what is the best place to go to?
Well, the best way is probably through email. Like just I'd say with my Game Plan company, would probably be the best contact. So jeff@gameplanhr.ca. And my cell phone, 780-982-3447. I'm more of a texting guy, so feel free to text me anytime at that number. And then I've got several staff underneath me too that eventually can get you connected with as well to connect with them. So.
Brilliant. Well, what we'll do is we'll make sure we've got that contact information on our show notes so that people can make use of that. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate this. It's fun. It's fun getting to know you. It's fun getting to know everyone I have on here, but everyone has a unique story. Thank you for sharing a little bit more story here today, just to hear some of your thinking, where you came from. so much of the time, a frustration I personally have is that often products or tools take ownership of an entrepreneur's success. And the problem that I have with it is it's the entrepreneur doing all this stuff, right? Having said that, it's still if there's a good tool out there, we want to learn about it. We want to share it. We want to help each other out. So I really appreciate this.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was very enjoyable to do this.